guys, and welcome back. Today I am starting on my fall art journey. I think this is something that a lot of us experience, and that's during fall time, at least for me, I feel so much more connected with the things that inspire my artwork. I always want to channel that feeling and emotional connection that I had to this time when I was a kid, and that spooky, eerie quality to fall evenings and nights. And I love this time. This time, it just feels the most creatively charged for me. So today I'm working on the first piece that's in the line of this burst that I usually have of creativity during this time. So I'm really excited to work on it and talk a bit about the inspirations behind it and getting into the fall time with art. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about it. So I've been doing Inktober's almost every year for, I should count actually. It feels like it's been like 5 or 6, but now I'm not really sure. But it's been a while that I have done it pretty regularly, and it's no secret that I love doing these art challenges. There's just something really inspiring. It just lights a fire in me and my creativity when it feels like there's this connection with all these other artists working at the same time on the same shared goal and excitement. And I love the challenge of it, of working on these big things, these big projects. So yeah, I am excited to start working on this year's project. And I don't think I'm going to officially announce the scope of it or what it's going to be, but I do know that I want to be using inks. So this is a little bit of like a test run, a trial run of trying out the process, seeing how I like it, what things need to be tweaked before I get into a really big project like Inktober, where I'm working on it every day and I'm working on a ton of stuff. So today I am working on a coloring page. So I'm doing line work with some brushes and ink, and there's not going to be any ink wash, which is something that I've done in the past and I love. But today it's just about the line work. So did I say this already? It's going to be a coloring page. And I started off a little rough, a little slow, a little out of practice. It was really obvious as I was working on this. A little backup, but I did the Kickstarter for my tarot deck. I'm sure a lot of you know about that. It was a big project, a lot of digital work, and then it was a lot of editing after, and then I took a bit of a break. So it's been a while since I have really worked on traditional artwork. So I was feeling it. I was feeling the rustiness of my brush strokes, and the speed that I was working at. It felt really tedious, but also like I wasn't really focusing well. And this was at first, it was right at the beginning. And I felt like that meant that this process wasn't going to work for me doing the ink with the brushes. I thought that it was going to end up being really, really slow and time consuming to get an outcome that would have been the same had I chose to use like micron pens, like a technical black pen. And I thought that was going to be my answer, that as I finish this up, that I could make a new plan for the next piece, a different approach. I could test that out, see what I think about that before going into my bigger project. But after that first day, the second day that I picked it up, it was like night and day. I felt the fluidity of the brush strokes again. I felt like I could get pace, and I was getting more into the rhythm of avoiding the areas that needed to smudge. And I'll talk a little bit more about like the technicalities of what it took to create this. But yeah, I got the rhythm back that I have had in the past, and that just felt so exciting to feel like this actually was viable as an option, because it is one of my favorite ways to do line work is with a brush. I realized this, I discovered this a while ago, and I usually work with gouache for my line work in my watercolors, but oh man, it was just so pleasant to work with this really fluid ink. But anyways, the point of all of that was that I took some practice. I needed to get my muscles warmed up, my brain working in the right way. But once I did, it just, yeah, it reminded me how much I loved this traditional art making process. Let's talk a bit about the technical side of creating line work with a brush and ink. So the biggest hurdle that I run into that drives me nuts, and I run into this every time, no matter if I'm using ink or if I'm using gouache, but it is especially bad when I'm using ink because it stays wet longer, it's wetter. And that is smearing it. Oh man, I hate that. Who would enjoy that? No one likes that. It's terrible. But I found a few tricks to help avoid that, and when it does happen, to make it not so catastrophic. So the first thing is I try to work in a direction on the piece that keeps my hand moving away from the wet ink. I am someone who hops around all over a piece. So that's something that takes a little bit more awareness, but in general, I tend to work from like the upper right-hand corner downward. Since I'm left-handed, I'll work a bit of the opposite of where my hand's going to be dragging. This again is something that I only focus on a little bit as I'm working on different patches, because I do tend to hop around. But it is something that I like to be aware of. If I'm working on a little section, I will work in the upper right hand and move down, and then I can move to a different section. But yeah, the general direction is to work opposite of where your hand is going to be, so that you smear it less. I've also found that sometimes if I've done a stroke and it's really wet still, I can use my embossing gun that I use to dry out my watercolors. I can use that really quickly on that spot to dry out the ink so that I won't smear it. I didn't do that a lot with this piece or this paper because I was using Bristol board. I found that it warped a little bit more with that heat gun. But it's an option. It's certainly an option in the future for me if I decide to actually tape down these pieces. But yes, it's something for me to consider in the future as an option to help me not smear it, because that again is the biggest problem that I've had with this. It's the thing that can really just derail me. But the final thing that I'm getting to that actually did make a significant difference in both the outcome of the piece and also my enjoyment of the piece was finding a solution that allowed me to fix those mistakes. To know that I could basically erase the smudges, I could fix any imperfections or errant lines, issues that I have. Basically having an erase option has been kind of a game changer. I didn't used to give myself an option like this, and it isn't always applicable if I'm using ink washes, then it becomes a little bit trickier, but because this is strictly black and the white or cream of the paper, it allows me to go in with my gouache and I can cover up these smears and these mistakes. And I cannot tell you how much of a weight is lifted having that option and knowing it's there and knowing that for the most part, I'll be happy with that. It allows me to loosen up a lot more. So I found that I got more expressive brush strokes because I wasn't quite so choked up and tight on the brush and timid about it, because I knew that I could potentially fix it if it went really wrong. And this isn't a perfect solution. It doesn't bring it back to that perfect paper texture. You can still see where the gouache is, but it's night and day being able to fix it and not having to rely on only digitally fixing it and not having a final that I'm happy with. This just allows me to know that, okay, I can make tweaks, I can bring it back in, I can fix things, and I can be happy with it. And knowing that has just completely changed the game for me. It makes it so much more carefree and exciting and enjoyable rather than borderline stressful. And just a quick recap of how I like to place my line weight. I like to have a bit thicker line on the underside of shapes to imply a bit of a shadow. I love that look. It gives it a little bit of heaviness there and a little bit of dimensionality from the light or the implied light. So areas like the bottom part of her jaw and underneath her arms and the bottom of her hair, basically the bottom of anything, I will make just a little bit thicker. I also like to do a little bit thicker of a line around the character This part really depends on what the piece is. If it's a full piece with a full background, that can really vary. I would love to hear what your plans are coming up for fall time artwork, for any art challenges that are coming up. So for me, I know I said that I didn't really want to pin down exactly what I was doing because I am not sure exactly about the details yet, but I know that I'm going to do in some form Inktober and maybe a hybrid of Inktober, Drawtober, maybe fully doing Drawtober with some Inktober. I'm not sure exactly where the blend is, but I have a concept of what I want to be working on in the next month, and I am super excited to work on it. So yeah, I need to pin that down, specifically decide what I'm going to be doing and make a plan and then tell you guys about it. But I would love to hear what your plans are. What are you thinking about? Do you have any big projects? Are you following along with any of these challenges? Are you just excited to be feeling some fall energy for your artwork? I'd love to hear it. I want to hear what inspires you and what's coming up with your artwork. But that's about it for today. So thank you guys so much for coming with me, talking about one of my favorite topics, which is line work and fall. It's this perfect medley for me. Maybe that's why I really love creating artwork during this time, especially during October. It brings a lot of things back together. But yeah, I'm very excited about that. So stay tuned for me talking more about what I'm actually working on this fall and making artwork with me. I'm really excited for that. So yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.